Good afternoon. This is Robert Chisholm from Chisholm and Kilpatrick. Joining me today is Christine Clemens. And today we're going to talk about compensation and pension exams.
Sure. So just to start, compensation and pension examinations are examinations conducted by the VA or by one of their contracted providers. And they assist the VA in determining elements that are essential in them deciding veterans' claims. Not all veterans' claims need to have a compensation and pension examination, but a large number of them do. And so they're a critical point for veterans to be able to, quite frankly, access benefits for VA to make favorable decisions on their cases.
So historically, the VA conducted these examinations in person at VA medical centers around the country. And then over the last, I want to say at least 10 years, they started to use VA contractors. And so they've entered into, the Department of Veterans Affairs has entered into contracts with a number of different providers to do these examinations. And then in March, the VA basically shut down in-person VA compensation and pension exams. And so what happened as a result of that?
So as a result of that, there have been a number of delays in adjudicating veterans' cases. There are some cases where these exams are necessary for VA to make their determination. And so those cases are really, a large number of those cases are just waiting on examinations. For some cases, VA did integrate their telehealth examination. So they've started bringing in some telehealth examinations. And what that is it's essentially a virtual, kind of similar to what we're doing, screening with somebody who would be conducting an exam. But those examinations cannot be used for every disability type. They are limited. And there are some challenges with those as well. So VA has tried to make sure that people are still having, as much as possible, that they're still having some kinds of exams, so they're not totally shut down. There are also what are called acceptable clinical evidence, or ACE exams, that can be used in certain claims where they can be decided based on evidence of record. So they're typically what we would refer to as record review cases, where somebody would look at the records that are in a veteran's file. They would be asked specific medical questions and would make determinations on those. But a large number of them, of these examinations, have just have stopped. And so that means delays, as I mentioned, and in some cases there have been denials of veterans' claims improperly. VA did say that they would, that if somebody was scheduled for an examination and they missed it during this period of time, that they would not be penalized. But there have been some cases where that hasn't happened.
So we actually have seen cases where the VA denied a claim, saying that the veteran didn't show up for the exam, when in fact the exam had been canceled. And we've learned from other people that they've experienced the exact same thing around the country. And so if that happens, realistically, what's someone to do in that kind of a situation?
So there are a number of things that someone can do. We see a lot of times people will call VA and say, hey, what happened? I got this denial in the mail. It says that I had an exam, but I wasn't supposed to have an exam. So they could call, and that communication is supposed to be documented within their file. If they have a representative, their representative might be able to reach out to someone within the regional office to see if they can maybe more easily just have a conversation about what's happened, and the person in the regional office may be able to go back into the case and sort of fix in the file, that denial. But ultimately, I think a lot of veterans are going to need to file appeals on these denials. And their basis for appeal would be that their examination was canceled. And even if their examination wasn't technically canceled, if they didn't receive notice of cancellation, VA publicly made statements that exams during this period would be canceled, that the facilities would not be open, and they also made a number of public statements that veterans would not be penalized. And I think that's the key, is that that where these exams are needed on a veteran's case, VA should not be denying for failure to attend during a period when it wasn't safe to go to a facility, for a period of time when they had canceled exams across the board. So it's important that the veteran in their appeal would cite that.
And we would strongly urge them not to accept the denial under these circumstances particularly, and make sure that they either reach out, as you suggested, to the regional office and get it corrected, or choose one of the paths to appeal their case.
Absolutely.
So the other thing we're learning is that the backlog is increasing. And let's talk a minute about the backlog, because there's been this historic backlog of legacy cases that is the VA is plowing through and has been plowing through right through the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is the backlog that is now increasing under the new appeal system. And as of November, the backlog was 64,000 cases. And what the backlog means in this context is that it's over 125 days for the VA to make a decision on a claim. We now understand, as of a couple of weeks ago, June 4th, that backlog has increased to 119,000. And we learned that from an article in Stars and Stripes. And we believe this is in large part due to the challenge of VA conducting these compensation and pension exams.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the other impact that has hit VA is the Blue Water Navy cases. So in January, the VA started adjudicating and making decisions on veterans who served within 12 nautical miles of the country of Vietnam, but there's a technical term that I'm not going to get into right now.
Baseline.
A line out basically along the islands, 12 nautical miles out from that. But VA got a lot of claims, and these are now presumptive under the Agent Orange Act claims, but they still need to conduct examinations. So it's the combination of being hit with COVID-19 and not being able to conduct these examinations with the impact of these claims coming in the door that has really maybe put the VA a little bit in more of a delay because of the impact of that, I guess. So unfortunately, these Blue Water Navy veterans may have to wait even longer to get their claims adjudicated now because of this backlog. And that's unfortunate. We also want to talk a little bit about dysfunction. And historically, the VA has provided, up until a couple of months ago, their examinations on their website. And these examinations are called DBQs, Disability Benefits Questionnaires. But then in the middle of the pandemic, the VA decided we're not going to provide these anymore for anyone to use. And so what was their rationale for that, Christine?
So there were a few things that that VA had said, and some of it was based on an Office of the Inspector General report. They felt that they didn't need to have these public-facing examinations, one, because they felt like they had capacity to see people in person. And that includes people who are living in rural areas and living abroad. Some of their concerns were that they thought that people were utilizing these disability benefits questionnaires in ways that were maybe somehow less reliable than VA's own providers. Some of the things that they cited too were that the disability benefits questionnaires were being completed by people who hadn't seen the veterans in person, or who perhaps had practices in states that were different from the state in which the veteran lived. And so they no longer thought it was necessary for the adjudication of a veteran's case for them to be able to access these disability benefits questionnaires, as they had sort of initially felt a need. Certainly when people were filing fully developed claims, the disability benefits questionnaires were often used and touted as a great way for people to be able to file fully developed claims on their cases. But there were a number of reasons that all seemingly made little sense at the time, and perhaps make even less sense now, in light of the fact that VA is now utilizing telehealth examinations themselves, and have been seeking ways to lessen any restrictions that they have on conducting these examinations to ensure that veterans have the necessary medical evidence in support of their claims.
And, one of the advantages of having these DBQs available, and there are a lot of them. In other words, for every condition that VA rates, there's basically an examination in the form of a DBQ. So the veteran who, say, files a claim for an ankle injury would be able to download that examination form, take it to a private doctor to complete, and then that evidence could be used to support a claim. And it also leads to transparency. What is it the VA is looking at when they examine me? And the exams would give the veterans an idea of what VA is looking at, what they're rating for. And, this hide the ball mentality is not good in my mind, especially given what's happening now. And as you know, telehealth medicine, these telehealth examinations are taking place. If a veteran is filing for a condition for which they can get a telehealth medical examination, their claim is going to be decided more quickly than other conditions, and I'm thinking neurological, orthopedic, where you pretty much need an in-person examination in order to get it rated, and that's unfortunate. How does all this relate to the idea of access to the veteran's claims file? Because one of the challenges is, how do we know whether an exam was actually scheduled? How do we know if an exam has been received? How do we know what was communicated to the veteran? And how does access relate to all those things?
Yeah, so access to the veterans file, and what we're talking about specifically is access for attorneys and accredited agents who are representing veterans. What access allows is for that representative to go into VA system, look at their client's file and see that there is an exam request. Or in cases where they knew that there was a previous exam request, they can see that maybe it has been, what questions are being asked of the provider. They can see if it's something where VA has maybe identified it as a case where they could conduct a telehealth examination, where they could conduct one of these exams, these ACE exams, based on the evidence of record. And they can also see if the exams are canceled, which is pretty important in light of the discussion we had a little bit earlier with people being denied. The notice to the veteran doesn't come through VA's system, their file system, so that's not always in a veteran's file. But largely what the representative is able to do is to track when the exam is scheduled, where it's scheduled, and they can stay on top of what's supposed to happen with the examination. Once that's completed, it gets uploaded into the file. The representative can see that examination. They can make arguments based on the examination. This examination supports a grant of service connection, for example. And so it's pretty critical to being able to represent veterans effectively and to be able to provide them with a lot of information that right now is so hard for them to obtain. So that access is pretty critical. The other thing is that, especially now with VA having removed these disability benefits questionnaires from what are called public-facing questionnaires from their own website, is within VA system, the representative can find these previous disability benefits questionnaires. So in a case where a veteran has an orthopedic condition and their exam has been canceled because it's not something that VA is able to conduct via telehealth, maybe that person is seeing their provider and they would be able to take that disability benefits questionnaire and have their provider complete it. So access allows the representative to assist their client in doing that, even though the disability benefits questionnaires are not on VA's website anymore.
So let's transition to a little bit of good news, because we understand as of June 8th, certain VA medical centers are now beginning to conduct in-person VA exams again. And that's a step in the right direction, but it's my understanding this is not a nationwide policy, but it's depending on the individual state and what the restrictions are or not that may permit these kinds of examinations.
Correct, but I think one thing to note, and not to put a damper on your positive news, is that some veterans still have concerns with going to VA medical centers. Some of them have a number of conditions that make them high risk for getting COVID-19 and makes them more susceptible. And they've maybe been told by their providers to avoid large medical facilities. So while some people are being scheduled and are comfortable going for these examinations, other people are still not going to be comfortable going. And they can let VA know, and VA will reschedule these exams. They've said that they will reschedule these exams. So that's something that's important for people to know, that if they're really uncomfortable with it, or if they have been advised by their physicians not to be in this type of setting, that they should notify VA.
The other thing we've recently learned that VA is asking for some legislative fixes that would help them lower the backlog. We know that they went to Congress after getting buy-in from all the constituents of the VA claims process to change the appeals process to eliminate the backlog. And here we are again, and they're asking for a little assistance. So one of the things they want to do is give doctors the ability to see patients across state lines. And they also want to give nurse practitioners authority to conduct examinations. Well, the fact of the matter is nurse practitioners do conduct examinations presently, so I don't know why they need to go to Congress for that. But what would the impact of either of one of these things have on, generally in your view, on the claims process?
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is to ensure that veterans are having these exams that are necessary for their claims, and is to reduce this this backlog, at least with respect to examinations. But I don't know how long it's going to take for a congressional fix. So the time that it takes to get this, we don't really know how long that could be. And I think in the meantime, every day there are veterans cases. Veterans are filing claims. They're developing worsening conditions, and they're going to be new cases of people having to wait and on these examinations. So, I mean, I think, again, these are attempts to expand the C&P exams and catch up a little bit. But I think one thing for veterans claims is that if they do have providers, private providers that they're working with, providers outside of the VA who are willing to talk about their condition, write a letter on their behalf, describe what's going on and its relation to its impact on the person's life, then the veteran is still, I think, always has the right to submit information to VA in support of their claims and appeals. And certainly it doesn't have to be on these disability benefits questionnaires. So that's something that they may want to consider if there is a substantial delay in them getting scheduled for these exams.
And I think that's a really good point, because a veteran can describe his or her symptoms to their physician can write a report. It doesn't have to be on the DBQ form. And the VA is required to review that in making its decision. And I think that's a really good point. Before we finish up, I did want to share that CCK is in the process of obtaining the DBQ examinations. And when we do, we are going to post them on our website. When we do post them on our website, they are not there now. We will let folks know through social media, especially Facebook. So stay tuned for that. Any final words, Christine, before we...
I think just, recap is that if somebody's claim has been denied because they missed an exam, during this period of COVID, they can certainly file an appeal and they may want to work with an attorney who's accredited by VA or an accredited representative to do that. So, there is recourse. Don't give up hope. I think just also to let people know that they may be waiting a little bit longer if they're waiting on an examination. Things are starting to open up. So VA is posting on their website. We keep posting on our website as we have any information on C&P exams in that process. So just kind of keep checking. And then if they can reach out to a provider who is able to provide information about their disability, then they're certainly welcome and encouraged to do that.
Well, Christine, I wanted to thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is Robert Chisholm from Chisholm, Kilpatrick, and Christine Clemens. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.